The emergency alarm echoed through the massive halls of the Galactic Council station. Zixera pressed her six-fingered hand against the cold metal wall and felt the vibrations travel through her thin blue skin. Another world had fallen. The 47th in 3 months, she walked quickly through the curved corridors toward the main chamber. Other council members moved past her, their faces showing the same fear she felt. The Voltari people had lived in peace for over 2,000 years. But now that peace was ending, the great doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in their assigned seats. Some had scales, others had fur, some breathed air, others needed special suits filled with gas, but they all shared the same worried look. "The mining colony on Zarian 7 has gone silent," announced Speaker Thelmus from the center platform. His voice was deep and tired. "That makes it the third system lost this week." A wave of frightened whispers spread through the chamber. Zixthara took her seat and watched the large screen above them show images of destroyed cities and burned forests. The Kethur had been there. The Kethur Empire had appeared from the dark regions of space 5 years ago. They were tall, muscular, beings with thick gray skin and sharp teeth. Their technology was advanced, but that was not what made them dangerous. What made them dangerous was that they enjoyed killing. "How many ships did they use this time?" asked Representative Quinter from the insect-like Zix species. "Only 12, Thelmus replied. 12 ships against a colony of 50 million people. Number hit everyone like a physical blow. 12 ships. Most council worlds would send 100 ships just to move cargo, but the Kethur could destroy an entire world with 12. Zixthera had seen the reports. The Kethur did not just conquer worlds, they destroyed them. They used weapons that poisoned the air and water. They killed civilians and soldiers equally. They took no prisoners and made no deals. Every world they touched became a dead rock, floating in space. "What about the defense fleets we sent to protect the outer colonies?" asked another representative. Thelmus looked down at his notes. His hands shook slightly. "The combined fleet of the Altarian Republic and the Centauri Alliance engaged the Kethur forces 3 days ago. We lost contact after the first hour of fighting. The chamber fell silent. The combined fleet had contained over 300 ships and 40,000 crew members. If they were gone, then the Kethur were moving closer to the core worlds where billions lived. Zixthera remembered. Her home world of Veltar, the crystal cities that rose from the purple oceans, the singing forests where her children played, the peaceful libraries where knowledge from 1,000 worlds was kept safe. All of it would burn if the Kethur came. "We need to consider evacuation. Of the border systems," said Representative Moldock of the rock-like granite people. His voice sounded like stones grinding together. "Move everyone to the protected core worlds." "And then what?" Quinter clicked his mandibles angrily. "Hide behind our shields until they break them too. Kethur have shown they can destroy any defense we build." It was true. Kethur had weapons that could punch through energy. Shields like they were made of paper. They had fighters that moved faster than tracking systems could follow. They had soldiers that seemed to feel no fear and showed no mercy. But worst of all, they were smart. Every battle taught them something new. Every defense the Council built, the Kethur found a way to break it. They learned from every fight and became stronger. "There must be something we can do," said Representative Ethera of the Flying Skyborn people. Her feathers were ruffled with worry. "Some weapon we have not tried. Some alliance we have not made." Thalmus activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Red dots marked Kethur-controlled systems. They formed an ugly stain that was growing larger every day. Green dots showed council worlds, and yellow dots showed neutral systems. "We have contacted every major military power in the galaxy," Thalmus said. "The warrior clans of Magna refuse to fight an enemy they cannot defeat in honorable combat. The Machine Collective says the probability of victory is too low to risk their units. The Psionic Brotherhood claims their mind powers do not work on Kethur mental shields." Each rejection felt like another nail in the coffin of galactic civilization. These were the strongest military forces known to exist, and they were all afraid of the Kethur. What about the ancient protocols? asked a small voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look at Librarian Nexus, an old being whose species had helped write the original council laws thousands of years ago. His wrinkled face was covered in tattoos that told the history of his people. "What ancient protocols?" Thalmas asked. Nexus stood slowly, his joints creaking with age. "The Emergency Contact Directive. It was written into the council charter, but never used. In times of extreme danger, we are allowed to contact any sentient species within our communication range and ask for help. But we have already contacted everyone," Zixthera said. "Every major power has refused to help us." "Not everyone," Nexus replied. "Only the major powers. The directive says any sentient species. That includes the small ones, the weak ones, the ones no one pays attention to." Representative Moldock made a sound like rocks falling. "What good would weak species do against the Kethur? If our strongest warriors cannot stop them, how could primitive aliens help?" "Perhaps strength is not the only answer," Nexus said quietly. "Perhaps we need something different, something the Kethur have never faced before." The idea was desperate, but desperation was all they had left. Thalmas called for a vote, and the Emergency Contact Directive was activated for the first time in galactic history. Over the next few days, messages went out to every corner of the galaxy. Most went to empty space or dead worlds. Some reached primitive civilizations that could barely understand the transmission. A few reached species that were too afraid to respond, but one message reached a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system at the edge of the galaxy. The planet was listed in the archives as inhabited by a species called humans, but no one had paid much attention to them before. The human response came back surprisingly quickly. It was a simple audio transmission from someone who called himself Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. "We received your message about the Kethur threat," the human voice said. The translator made it sound calm and confident. "Understand the situation, and we want to help. We are preparing our forces now. We will be there in 2 weeks." The message ended with coordinates for a meeting point near the council station. Zixthera listened to the recording again. There was something strange about the human's voice. He did not sound afraid. He did not ask about the size of the Kethur forces or their weapons. He did not demand payment or negotiate terms. He just said they would come. 2 weeks, she whispered to herself. What kind of species can prepare for interstellar war in 2 weeks? Around her, other council members were asking the same question. They pulled up what little information they had about humans and Earth. The planet was classified as extremely dangerous due to its unstable weather, active geology, and aggressive native life forms. The humans themselves were described as young species with a tendency toward violence and territorial behavior. Not exactly the kind of allies anyone would choose. But they were the only ones who had agreed to help. 2 weeks later, sensors detected ships approaching the meeting coordinates. Zixthera watched the main screen as the human fleet came into view. The ships were smaller than expected, made of gray metal with sharp edges. They looked functional rather than beautiful, like tools built for a specific job. A new transmission came from the lead ship. This is Captain Jake Morrison requesting permission to dock. "We are ready to discuss strategy against the Kethur threat." Thalmas gave permission, and soon the first humans in galactic history were walking through the council station corridors. They were bipedal mammals with soft pink skin and strange fur only on their heads. They looked fragile compared to most council species. But as Zixthera watched them move, she noticed something that made her pause. The humans walked like predators. Their eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. Their hands stayed near the weapons on their belts. They moved with the confidence of beings who had never met anything they could not kill. Maybe, she thought, weakness was not the right word to describe these strange aliens from the death world called Earth. The docking bay doors opened with a mechanical hiss. Zixthera stood with the other council representatives behind a protective barrier, watching the first humans step onto their station. She had expected them to look different up close, but seeing them in person was still a shock. They were so small. Most council species stood at least 8 feet tall, but these humans barely reached 6 feet. Their skin looked soft and easily damaged. They had no natural armor, no claws, no sharp teeth visible when they spoke. Even their eyes seemed weak, with tiny pupils that would be useless in low light. Captain Jake Morrison led the human group. He was a middle-aged male with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. His uniform was simple, dark blue fabric with small metal badges. No built-in weapons or armor that Zixthera could see. Behind him walked Commander Lisa Parker, a female human, with blonde hair tied back neatly. She carried a small device that beeped softly as it scanned the station's atmosphere. Two other humans flanked them, both males who kept looking around the docking bay with alert expressions. "Welcome to Galactic Council Station Harmony Tholmas," said through the translation system. His deep voice echoed in the large space. "We are grateful you answered our call for help." Captain Morrison stepped forward and made a slight bow with his head. "Thank you for having us. We came as soon as we could." His voice was steady and controlled. "I understand you are facing a military threat that has defeated your other allies." "That is correct," Tholmas replied. "The Kethur Empire has conquered 47 systems in the past few months. Our combined fleets cannot stop them." Zixthera watched the humans' faces carefully. Most species showed fear when they heard about the Kethur victories. Some trembled. Others made sounds of distress. But the humans just listened quietly, as if they were hearing about bad weather instead of galactic conquest. "How many ships do the Kethur typically use in their attacks?" Commander Parker asked. She was making notes on a small tablet. "Between 10 and 20 ships per system," Tholmas answered. "Each ship can carry up to 5,000 soldiers." The humans exchanged glances. Captain Morrison nodded slightly. "What about their weapons technology?" Representative Kethur clicked forward on his 6 legs. "They use plasma cannons that can melt through our strongest armor. Their missiles carry chemical warheads that poison entire continents. They have personal shields that protect their soldiers from our energy weapons." "Chemical weapons," one of the human males repeated quietly. Zixthera thought she heard him chuckle, but that seemed impossible. Why would someone laugh about poison gas? "Yes," Kethur continued. "The chemicals cause terrible pain and death. They also create fear in our soldiers. Many of our warriors refuse to fight once they see what these weapons do." "I see," Captain Morrison said. His expression had not changed at all. "What about their combat tactics?" Tholmas activated a holographic display showing footage from recent battles. The images were hard to watch. Kethur's soldiers moved through burning cities, destroying everything in their path. They killed soldiers and civilians without hesitation. They used weapons that caused maximum suffering instead of quick death. "They show no mercy," Tholmas explained. "They take no prisoners. They use fear as a weapon. They target civilian populations to break the will of defending forces. Their psychological warfare is as deadly as their physical weapons." The humans watched the footage in silence. Zixthera studied their faces, looking for signs of horror or fear. Instead, she saw something that confused her. The humans looked focused, like they were studying the images for useful information rather than being shocked by their brutality. "Commander." Parker pointed at one section of the display. "Their soldiers advance in tight formations. Are they vulnerable to area effect weapons during these movements?" "We do not use area effect weapons against populated areas," Representative Moldark rumbled. His rock-like face showed disapproval. "That would be dishonorable. We cannot harm innocent civilians." "Even to save them from conquest?" asked the second human male. "Especially then," Moldark replied firmly. "We fight to protect life, not to destroy it." The humans looked at each other again. Captain Morrison rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "What rules of engagement do your forces follow during combat?" "Rules of engagement?" Thelma seemed confused by the question. "Military protocols," Commander Parker explained. "What are your soldiers allowed and not allowed to do during battle?" "Oh, the honor codes," Kethur said, understanding now. "Council species follow the ancient honor codes. We do not attack retreating enemies. We do not harm non-combatants. We do not use weapons that cause unnecessary suffering." We allow enemies to surrender with dignity. We treat prisoners according to the standards of civilized warfare. Captain Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very careful, and the Kethur followed these same codes. No, Thelma said sadly. That is why they are winning. They have no honor. They fight like wild animals. Something flickered across the captain's face, an expression Zixthera could not read. I see. And you cannot change your own rules because... ... Because then we would be no better than them, Representative Ithera said, her feathers rustling with emotion. Civilization is built on the idea that there are limits to violence. Without those limits, we become monsters. The fourth human, who had been silent until now, spoke up. What if the choice is between becoming monsters and becoming extinct? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. No council member had an immediate answer. There must be another way, Zixthera said finally. Some solution that does not require us to abandon everything we believe in. Perhaps, Captain Morrison said. But first, we need to understand exactly what we are facing. Detailed information about Kethur military capabilities, ship designs, weapon specifications, troop numbers, supply lines. Of course, Thelma said, relieved to move to practical matters. We have prepared a complete briefing. The group moved to a smaller conference room where holographic displays showed every piece of information the council had gathered about their enemies. The humans sat quietly and absorbed everything. Ship blueprints, battle recordings, intercepted, communications, casualty reports. What struck Zixthera as strange was how calmly they took it all in. When other military advisors had seen this information, they had immediately started talking about how impossible the situation was. The humans just asked questions and made notes. Their logistics seemed vulnerable, Commander Parker observed, pointing to a supply route map, long supply lines with limited escort protection. We considered attacking their supply convoys, Representative Moldock said. But our honor codes require us to allow supply ships to surrender rather than destroying them outright. The Kethur learned to use fake surrender signals to ambush our forces. What about night attacks? Asked one of the human males. Most council species have poor night vision, Quinter explained. The Kethur adapted quickly and began conducting most of their operations in darkness. Underground warfare? The council lacks experience in subterranean combat. Kethur have extensive tunnel fighting capabilities. For every tactical suggestion the humans made, the council had a reason why it would not work. But instead of becoming discouraged, the humans seemed to become more interested. What about your own capabilities? Captain Morrison asked finally. What can human forces bring to this conflict? Thalmus hesitated. The question was polite, but everyone knew the answer. Earth was a primitive world on the edge of civilized space. Humans had barely achieved interstellar travel. They had no advanced weapons, no energy shields, no proven military victories against galactic-level threats. We appreciate your willingness to help, Thalma said diplomatically. But perhaps it would be safer to evacuate your population to protected core worlds. The Kethvar will eventually reach your system, and your people should not have to face that threat alone. Captain Morrison smiled, the first time any of the humans had shown much emotion. It was not a happy smile. Thank you for the concern, but evacuation will not be necessary. You do not understand. Zixthera said urgently. The Kethur have defeated every military force in the galaxy. They have weapons that can destroy entire continents. Show no mercy to anyone who opposes them. We understand perfectly, Commander Parker said quietly. But I think you might not understand us. She activated her own datapad and showed them an image of Earth. It was a blue and green world that looked peaceful from space. But as she zoomed in, the display showed massive storms, active volcanoes, frozen wastelands, and burning deserts. This is where we come from, she said. 90% of Earth's surface is deadly to most galactic species. The weather can kill you, the animals can kill you, the plants can kill you. Even the air composition would be toxic to many of you. You survived there, Quinter said. We did more than survive, Captain Morrison replied. We thrived. We adapted. We learned to kill everything that tried to kill us. He paused and looked directly at each council member. And then we learned to kill each other. The words sent a chill through the room. Zixthera felt her skin tingle. With something that might have been fear? For most of our history, humans have been at war, Commander Parker continued. The message from Captain Morrison reached Earth 3 days after the humans left the Council Station. General Alex Carter stood in the command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains. Reading the transmission for the third time, around him, dozens of officers and technicians worked at computer terminals, their faces lit by the glow of screens. Confirmed hostile contact, the message read, Galactic scale threat. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7, estimate 6 months until first contact with enemy forces in Sol System. Protocol 7. Carter had hoped he would never see those words. It was the last resort plan. It's created by human strategists who understood that their species might one day face something worse than themselves. Send the activation codes to all military commands, Carter told his communications officer. Joint Chiefs, Space Command, Strategic Defense Initiative, Industrial War Board. Tell them we have 6 months to prepare for total war. Within hours, the message had reached every corner of Earth. Military bases that had been quiet for decades suddenly came alive with activity. Factories that made civilian goods began retooling their production lines. Scientists who had been working on peaceful projects found themselves reassigned to weapons development. Dr. Susan Lee was in her laboratory at MIT when the call came. She had been working on new materials for space construction, but now her research team was being moved to a classified facility in Nevada. Her job was simple: take apart alien technology and figure out how to make it better. The samples arrived an hour ago, her assistant told her as they loaded equipment into military trucks. Captain Morrison brought back pieces of Kethur weapons and armor. Susan looked at the metal containers being loaded into the transport vehicle. Each one was marked with warnings about unknown technology and potential hazards. She smiled. Unknown technology was just another puzzle to solve, and humans were very good at solving puzzles. At the Lockheed Martin facility in California, engineers were already examining the Kethur ship fragments. The alien hull material was strong, but human metallurgists had been making armor for thousands of years. They knew how to find weaknesses. The plasma residue on this section shows their weapons operate at about 4,000 degrees, said engineer Bill Rogers, pointing to a burned piece of alien metal. Our ceramic composites can handle that temperature. We just need to make them thicker. What about their energy shields? Asked his colleague Maria Santos. Electromagnetic barriers, Bill replied, studying his instruments. Designed to stop energy weapons and solid projectiles. But I noticed they pulse at regular intervals. There might be a gap we can exploit. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, military planners were reviewing every piece of intelligence about Kethur tactics. Colonel Amy Rodriguez spread holographic battle maps across the conference table, showing each engagement the aliens had studied. They rely on shock and terror, she explained to the assembled officers. Hit hard, kill civilians, break enemy. Morale. Classic psychological warfare. How do we counter that? Asked Major Tim Brooks. Amy smiled grimly. We do not let them shock us, and we make sure they are more afraid of us than we are of them. The discussion that followed would have horrified the Galactic Council. The human officers talked about tactics that had been banned by civilized species for centuries. Chemical weapons, biological warfare, targeting civilian infrastructure, fake surrender signals, night raids, underground tunnel systems. The aliens follow honor codes, Colonel Rodriguez noted.
Ow.
They have rules about what they can and cannot do in war. We need to remember that the enemy does not follow those rules, so neither can we. Captain Pete Jackson was training new recruits at Fort Bragg when he received orders to establish a special warfare school. His job was to teach soldiers how to fight an enemy that was stronger, faster, and better equipped than humans.
Forget
Everything you learned about fair fighting, he told his first class of volunteers. Fair fighting is how you lose wars. We are going to learn how to win wars. The training was brutal, even by human military standards. Soldiers learned to make weapons from common materials. They practiced fighting in complete darkness. They studied how to use the environment as a weapon. They learned to set traps, conduct ambushes, and strike at supply lines. The enemy expects us to fight like the other galactic species, Jackson explained as his students crawled through mud under simulated enemy fire. Honorable combat between armies on open battlefields. Instead, we are going to fight like humans. It will be everywhere they do not expect us, and nowhere they can find us. At the same time, human industry was transforming itself for war production. The Boeing aircraft factory in Washington stopped making passenger planes and started building military transports. The Ford automotive plant in Michigan switched from making cars to making armored vehicles. In Detroit, General Motors engineers were reverse engineering Kethur vehicle designs. They found that alien technology was advanced, but not perfect. Human manufacturing techniques could produce the same results more quickly and cheaply. Their anti-gravity drives are efficient, reported Chief Engineer Carol White to the Industrial War Board, but they require rare elements that are hard to find. Our rocket engines use common fuels and are easier to maintain in combat conditions. The weapons factories were the busiest of all. Smith & Wesson increased rifle production by 300%. Lockheed began mass-producing missile systems. Even civilian companies joined the effort. John Deere started making military Q engineering equipment instead of farm tractors. But the most important work was happening in secret laboratories around the world. Human scientists were not just copying alien technology, they were improving it. The Kethur had created weapons designed to kill efficiently. Humans created weapons designed to kill creatively. Dr. Lee made the first breakthrough 3 weeks after starting her research. She discovered that Kethur energy shields had a fatal flaw. They were designed to stop the types of weapons used by other galactic species, but they had never encountered human projectile weapons. Their shields expect energy beams or plasma bolts, she explained to General Carter during a video conference. They are not calibrated for solid metal objects moving at high velocity. A simple steel bullet can punch right through their best defenses. What about their personal armor? Carter asked. Same problem, Susan replied, holding up a piece of damaged Kethur chestplate. This material can deflect energy weapons and resist most chemical attacks. But it cracks when hit by physical projectiles. Our standard military ammunition should be very effective. The news spread quickly through the human military. Weapons that had been considered primitive by galactic standards were suddenly the most advanced technology available. Human soldiers would go into battle carrying rifles that fired metal bullets, just like their ancestors had used for centuries. At the Naval Research Laboratory, scientists were working on space combat tactics. The Kethur were used to fighting enemies who engaged in formal ship-to-ship battles. Human naval tradition was different. Submarine warfare, explained Admiral Ben Collins to his staff. Silent running, stealth attacks, hit-and-run tactics. The enemy expects us to meet them in open space combat. Instead, we hide in asteroid fields and strike when they are not ready. The humans began building ships designed for guerrilla warfare in space. Small, fast vessels that could hide among space debris and launch surprise attacks, unlike the large, impressive warships favored by other species. Human ships were built to be invisible until it was too late. Military recruitment reached levels it's not seen since the Great Wars of the 20th century. But these were not desperate conscripts being forced to fight. These were volunteers who understood what was at stake. The recruitment posters were simple. They want to exterminate humanity. We disagree. Training camps appeared in every state. Former soldiers came out of retirement to teach new recruits. Veterans of old conflicts shared their knowledge with young fighters who had never seen real combat. War is not about being brave. Retired Sergeant Dan Murphy told his trainees at Camp Pendleton. War is about being smart, being fast, and being alive when the enemy is dead. Everything else is just stories people tell afterwards. The psychological preparation was as important as the physical training. Human military psychologists studied the reports from council worlds that had faced the Kethur. They identified the fear responses that had caused other species to break and run. The enemy uses terror as a weapon. Dr. Patricia Stone explained to a group of officers. They show no mercy. because they want their reputation to defeat enemies before the fighting even starts. But terror only works if you let it work. Humans have been dealing with things that want to kill us for millions of years. We're very good at being afraid and fighting anyway. 6 months after Captain Morrison had returned from the Council Station, Earth was ready for war. The planet that had seemed primitive to galactic observers had transformed itself into the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. General Carter stood in the same command center where he had received the first warning. Around him, displays showed the positions of human forces throughout the Sol system, hidden bases on asteroids, camouflaged weapon platforms near Jupiter, mining ships converted to carry nuclear weapons. Commander Kethur of the Kethur Imperial Fleet studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The small system ahead contained only one inhabited world, a primitive planet called Earth, intelligence reports showed the humans had barely achieved space travel and possessed no significant military technology. "How many ships shall we deploy for this conquest?" asked his tactical officer Gorthak. Kethur barely looked up from his reports. 8 ships should be sufficient. The humans sent a small delegation to the Galactic Council, so they know we are coming, but they have had only months to prepare. What could such a primitive species accomplish in such a short time? The Kethur fleet moved through the outer solar system without concern. They had conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics: arrive with overwhelming force, destroy all resistance, eliminate the population. Simple and effective. But as they passed the orbit of the planet Jupiter, something unexpected happened. The empty space around them suddenly filled with explosions. "Contact!" Gorthak shouted. Multiple missile launches from unknown positions. Kethur spun to face the tactical display. Dozens of projectiles were streaking toward his ships from hidden launch points throughout the asteroid belt. But these were not the energy weapons used by other galactic species. These were simple chemical rockets carrying nuclear warheads. "Possible," Kethur muttered. "Our sensors detected no ships or stations in this area." The first missiles struck the rear ships of the Kethur formation. Nuclear fire bloomed in the darkness of space as 2 destroyers disappeared in clouds of superheated plasma. The other ships raised their energy shields, but more missiles were already incoming. "Enemy weapons are using primitive nuclear fission," the weapons officer reported. "Ouch!" "But the warheads are much larger than standard galactic weapons. Our shields are holding, but power consumption is critical." Captain Danny Wright watched the battle unfold from his hidden command post inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Around him, human technicians tracked the enemy ships and coordinated the missile attacks. "First wave successful," reported his weapons officer. 2 enemy destroyers eliminated. Remaining ships are raising shields and moving into defensive formation. "Good," Danny said calmly. "Now they know we are here. Phase 2, launch the fighters." Throughout the asteroid belt, concealed hangar bays opened to reveal squadrons of human fighter craft. These ships were small and fast, designed for hit-and-run attacks rather than formal combat. They carried no energy shields or advanced weapons, just speed, stealth. Pilots who had trained for this moment their entire lives. The Kethur had never faced fighter swarms before. Other galactic species preferred large, heavily armed ships that fought in organized formations. The human fighters moved like a school of fish, individual units working together without formal command structure. Enemy fighters are not following standard engagement protocols, Gorthak reported as explosions bloomed around the Kethur ships. "They attack from multiple directions simultaneously and retreat before we can target them effectively." Kethur watched his ship struggle to track the fast-moving human craft. The fighters would streak in, fire their weapons, and disappear back into the asteroid field before the Kethur could respond. Each attack did little damage, but there were hundreds of fighters, and the damage was adding up. "Deploy our own fighter?" "Squadrons," Kethur ordered. "Show these primitives how real warriors fight." But when the Kethur fighters engaged the humans, they discovered another problem. Human pilots did not fight like other galactic species. They used ramming attacks, collision courses, and self-destruct weapons. Tactics that were considered insane by civilized standards. "Lieutenant," Sarah Kim dove her fighter directly at a Kethur bomber, firing her weapons until the last second before ejecting in an escape pod. Her ship smashed into the alien craft, and both vessels exploded in a ball of fire. Pilot Kim has been recovered, her squadron leader reported over the radio. Enemy bomber destroyed. Copy that, Falcon leader, came the reply from the command asteroid. Nice flying. The Kethur pilots were confused and frightened by such tactics. In their culture, warriors fought to bring glory to themselves and their clan. The idea of deliberately destroying your own ship to kill an enemy was incomprehensible. Humans fight like madmen, one Kethur pilot reported. They show no concern for their own survival. How do we combat an enemy that does not fear death? As the space battle raged, the Kethur fleet continued toward Earth. But what they found, there was not the helpless planet they had expected. The entire world had been turned into a fortress. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like a steel ring. Each platform bristled with weapons and armor. But these were not the elegant energy weapons favored by other species. These were massive railguns that fired chunks of metal at incredible velocity. Beginning orbital bombardment, Vector announced as his remaining ships approached Earth. Target all major population centers. But when the Kethur ships fired their plasma, cannons at the planet's surface, return fire immediately streaked up from the ground. Earth's surface was covered with hidden missile silos, gun emplacements, and defensive bunkers. Major Kate Thompson crouched in her command bunker beneath the ruins of what had once been Denver.
Ow.
Around her, human soldiers monitored dozens of computer screens showing the battle in orbit. Enemy bombardment incoming, her communications officer reported. Impact in 30 seconds. All units take cover, Kate ordered. Prepare for counter-battery fire. The Kethur plasma beam struck the Earth's surface with devastating force. Entire city blocks disappeared in clouds of superheated gas. But instead of breaking human resistance, the bombardment seemed to make them angrier. Ground-based railguns are firing, came the report from the Orbital Defense Coordinator. Multiple hits on enemy cruiser designated Tango 3. Kate watched through her periscope as streaks of light reached up from hidden positions around the world. The humans had learned from studying Kethur technology. They knew exactly where to aim to punch through alien armor. But the real surprise came when Kethur troop transports landed on Earth's surface. The alien soldiers expected to face frightened civilians and poorly equipped militia. Instead, they encountered something far more dangerous. Humans fighting for their homeworld. Sergeant Rick Martinez led his squad through the rubble of downtown Los Angeles. The Kethur had bombed the city, but the humans had prepared for that possibility. Underground tunnel networks connected every major building, allowing defenders to move without being seen from orbit. Enemy patrol approaching from the north, his scout reported through the radio. 12 soldiers, full combat armor, energy weapons. Copy that, Rick replied. Team Alpha, take positions. Remember, these guys have never fought in an urban environment before. The Kethur soldiers moved down the empty street in a tight formation, their energy weapons scanning for targets. They had been trained to fight other galactic species in open terrain. City warfare was completely foreign to them. Rick triggered the first explosive charge when the aliens reached the intersection. The blast brought down part of a building, separating the Kethur squad and blocking their retreat. Then his soldiers opened fire from concealed positions in the surrounding rubble. The human weapons were simple by galactic standards, chemically propelled bullets fired from metal tubes. But Dr. Lee had been right about the Kethur shields. The energy barriers that could stop plasma beams and particle weapons were useless against solid projectiles. Enemy down, his marksman reported. Their personal shields do not stop our ammunition. Keep firing, Rick ordered. Do not let them regroup. The battle that followed was quick and brutal. The Kethur soldiers were stronger and faster than humans, but they had never faced an enemy that used the environment itself as a weapon. Hidden explosives, collapsing buildings, sniper fire from unexpected angles, tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Within minutes, the entire Kethur patrol was eliminated. Rick's squad had lost 2 soldiers, But they had proven something important. The feared Kethur warriors could be killed. Similar engagements were happening all across Earth. In the mountains of Afghanistan, human fighters used guerrilla tactics, learned from decades of warfare. In the jungles of Vietnam, they employed stealth and ambush techniques that had defeated previous invaders. The Kethur found themselves fighting an enemy unlike anything they had encountered before. These humans did not fight to gain honor or glory. They fought to survive, and they were very good at it. Our ground forces are requesting immediate evacuation, Gorthok reported to Commander Victor. They are taking heavy casualties and cannot establish secure landing zones. Victor stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His invasion force was being destroyed by a species that had seemed completely primitive just hours before. How is this possible? He demanded. Our weapons are superior. Our armor is stronger. Our soldiers are better trained. The humans do not fight like other species, his intelligence officer replied quietly. They use tactics that our training never covered. They attack our weaknesses instead of our strengths. They seem to know exactly how to kill us. The news of Earth's victory spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives who had written off humanity as another failed species watched in stunned silence as reports flooded in from across Kethur space. Zixthera stood before the main display, reading transmission after transmission. Each message brought more impossible news. Human fleets were striking deep into enemy territory. Kethur worlds that had been considered untouchable were falling one by one. This cannot be accurate, Representative Moldark rumbled, his stone-like features showing confusion. Reports claim a single human fleet destroyed an entire Kethur battle group at the Zarian system. I have confirmed the data with 3 independent sources, Thelmus replied, his voice filled with disbelief. 17 Kethur ships eliminated with minimal human losses. The enemy survivors are refusing to engage human forces in direct combat. Representative Quinter clicked his mandibles nervously. How did they advance so quickly? The Zarian system is deep in Kethur territory, hundreds of light years from Earth. The humans do not fight like other species, said Librarian Nexus, his ancient eyes studying the tactical reports. Look at their movement patterns. They do not advance in straight lines or capture territory systematically. They strike at supply bases, communication centers, and isolated outposts, cutting the Kethur Empire apart from the inside. The display showed a map of the galaxy with recent battle sites marked in different colors. Red dots showed Kethur defeats, blue dots showed human victories. The pattern was unlike anything the Council had ever seen in galactic warfare. Admiral Carol Price stood on the bridge of the human battleship U.S. Liberty, studying similar data from a very different perspective. Around her, human officers coordinated attacks across dozens of star systems simultaneously. Status report from Strike Group 7, her communications officer announced. The Kethur mining facility at Rigel 4 has been neutralized. No enemy. Survivors. Strike Group 12 reports successful completion of Operation Sledgehammer. Came another update. Enemy shipyard at the Capella system is destroyed. Our losses were minimal. Carol nodded, making notes on her tactical pad. The human war machine had grown far beyond what anyone at the Galactic Council could have imagined. Earth's industrial capacity was now producing warships faster than the Kethur could destroy them. But more importantly, human tactics were proving devastatingly effective. Where other species had tried to match Kethur's strength with strength, humans attacked. Weakness with intelligence. Ma'am, we are receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Collins at the Vega system, Raid reported. The holographic display activated, showing the grizzled face of Ben Collins. Behind him, the bridge of his ship showed signs of recent combat, scorch marks, and emergency lighting. Carol, we have a situation here, Ben said without preamble. The Kethur are trying something new. They have gathered their remaining fleets at the Arcturus system, nearly 300 ships. A final stand, Carol asked. Looks like it. Intelligence suggests they are planning to make their last push toward the core galactic worlds. If they break through our lines here, they could still threaten billions of civilians. Carol studied the tactical data that accompanied Ben's transmission. The Kethur had pulled ships from across their empire, creating the largest fleet they had ever assembled. It was a desperate move, but it might work. How long until they reach the core worlds if they get past you, she asked. 2 weeks, maybe. 3, Ben replied. The Council species have no defenses that can stop a force that size. Carol made her decision quickly. We will not let them get past you. I am bringing every available ship to Arcturus. It is time to end this war. 3 days later, the largest space battle in galactic history began in the Arcturus system. The Kethur fleet was massive and powerful, but they faced an enemy that had learned to turn their own strengths against them. Captain Frank Wilson commanded a squadron of human destroyers as they approached the enemy formation. The Kethur ships moved in the traditional pattern, large vessels in the center, smaller ships providing escort coverage. Remember the plan Frank told his pilots over the communication system? We do not try to match their firepower, make them fight the way we want to fight. The human ships scattered as they entered weapons range. Refusing to engage in the formal ship-to-ship combat the Kethur expected, instead, they used hit-and-run attacks, electronic warfare, and coordinated swarm tactics. The result was chaos. In the Kethur formation, our commanders had trained for organized battles between fleets of similar design, had no experience fighting an enemy that refused to follow established military doctrine. Enemy ships are not maintaining formation, reported the Kethur tactical officer aboard the flagship destroyer of worlds. They attack individually and retreat before we can coordinate counterfire. Supreme Commander Kethur watched his tactical display with growing frustration. Each time his ships moved to engage the humans, the enemy forces would withdraw just out of range. But when his ships tried to continue toward their objective, the humans would attack again. Deploy fighter squadrons to eliminate their smaller vessels, he ordered. But the Kethur fighters found themselves facing the same problem as their capital ships. Human fighter pilots used ramming attacks, suicide runs, and coordinated wolfpack tactics that violated every principle of civilized aerial combat. Lieutenant Bobby Chen dove his fighter directly through a formation of Kethur bombers, firing continuously until his weapons overheated. When his fighter was too damaged to continue fighting, he aimed it at the largest enemy ship and ejected at the last second. Pilot Chen has been recovered, reported the search and rescue coordinator. Enemy heavy cruiser has lost main propulsion. The battle raged for hours, but gradually the tide turned in humanity's favor. The Kethur had superior individual ships and weapons, but human coordination and tactics proved more effective than alien technology. More importantly, the humans were not fighting to capture territory or gain glory. They were fighting to eliminate a threat to their species and their allies. This gave them a focus and determination that the Kethur could not match. Enemy flagship is attempting to withdraw, Captain Wilson reported, as the Kethur formation began to collapse. Negative, came the reply from Admiral Collins. All enemy vessels must be eliminated. Cannot allow any of them to escape and regroup. The final phase of the battle was swift and merciless. Human ships surrounded the remaining Kethur vessels and destroyed them systematically. When the last enemy ship exploded, the Kethur Empire effectively ceased to exist as a military threat. Back at the Galactic Council Station, the final battle reports were being analyzed by beings who were still struggling to understand what they had witnessed. Complete victory, Thalmus announced to the assembled representatives. The human fleet's reports total elimination of remaining Kethur forces. The threat has been neutralized. The chamber erupted in cheers from species that had lived in fear for months. But Zixera noticed that the celebration was mixed with something else, a new kind of respect for the humans that bordered on fear. How many human ships were lost in the final battle? Asked Representative Ethera, according to their reports. Less than 10% casualties, Tholmas replied. The Kethur lost 100% of their fleet. The numbers were staggering. The Kethur had assembled the largest military force in their history, and the humans had destroyed it while taking minimal losses. It was a demonstration of military effectiveness that no galactic species had ever achieved. Perhaps we should Invite Admiral Price to address the council, suggested Quinter, to thank humanity for their assistance and discuss future cooperation. 3 days later, Carol Price stood where Captain Morrison had stood months before. But the atmosphere in the chamber was completely different. Where the council had once looked at humans with pity and condescension, they now showed genuine respect, tinged with caution. The Galactic Council owes humanity a debt that can never be fully repaid, Thalma said formally. You have saved countless worlds and billions of lives. Carol nodded politely. We did what was necessary, the Kethur threatened. Not just your worlds, but ours as well. Could not allow that threat to continue. How were you able to defeat them so completely? Zixthera asked. They had superior technology and larger fleets. They had superior individual components, Carol replied. But war is not about having the best ships or the strongest weapons. War is about using what you have more effectively than your enemy uses what they have. But your tactics, Representative Moldock said uncertainly. Many of the methods you used would be considered problematic by council standards. Carol's expression became serious. We fought to win instead of fighting to look honorable. That is the difference between Deathworlder species and others. We learned long ago that honor is something you can afford after you have eliminated the threats to your survival. And now, asked Quinter, what does humanity want from the galaxy? Peace, Carol replied simply. The chance to explore, too. Learn to build something better than what came before. But if another threat like the Kethur appears, they will find us ready.